yeah.
Candid
I'm really excited for you to check out this interview.
Candid with Kimbra.
Hey, all. I hope everyone's doing great. We have another funny comedian on today. His name is Ritch Shydner, and he started off as a stand-up comedian, I believe, probably around in the 70s. And he's going to tell us all about that and how he became a writer for the Roseanne show. He was on it, I think, for a couple years. And he knows a lot about comedy. He knows a lot about timing. I know Bill Maher wrote something for one of his books. I'm going to ask him about that because I'm a big fan of Bill Maher. There is an art and a skill to all of this, comedy writing, stand-up comedy. So Ritch is going to give us some behind-the-scenes tidbits and advice. And let's stay tuned for Ritch Shydner.
Welcome to my podcast where I'll be speaking with guests candidly about interesting topics. So join me on Candid with Kimbra.
Today, I have a very special guest, Ritch Shydner, and I bet you a lot of people have mispronounced your name.
You are in the 1%, Kimbra.
I'm good. I was an English major in college. Maybe that's why.
Where did you go to school?
Cal State Fullerton.
Nice.
I minored in music and majored in English because I thought, I just want to have, I didn't want to have to take all the music courses all over again that I'd taken previously. I was going to major in music actually, but anyway, but I ended up loving it. I was just telling someone this the other day that I really loved being an English major because I felt like, what was that movie with Robin Williams where, he was going into
Dead Poet Society.
Yeah, that's what I felt like because, just a lot of philosophy and, I loved Chaucer. I couldn't even believe that I was so intimidated. I was so intimidated by taking the Chaucer class, right? It was either Shakespeare or Chaucer, but I ended up taking both. And I was like, and then my one good friend, Jeff, was like, no, you're going to like it because it's, it's just, when good literature transcends, centuries, I guess you would say, right?
Oh, yeah. When it just transcends the time limitations, which most popular art has, stand-up comedies like that. Stand-up comedy is so tied to the era that it's
true.
in. It doesn't time travel well at all, but great literature. Well, of course, Shakespeare. The first stand-up comic had a line on Shakespeare back in the 1860s. The first stand-up comic says, sure, Shakespeare has a great reputation, but what has he done lately?
Yeah, I know. I remember,
which is a good line back then.
I remember I'd read this one musician speaking badly about Shakespeare. He's like, it's not relevant. It's not, but it's just, when you really study Shakespeare, you realize, gosh, it's amazing that the stories, you change the people, the country, and it could happen again,
The costumes, the language changed, but human behavior hasn't changed that much, really.
True. Good point. Yeah.
History. The 7 deadly sins are the 7 deadly sins in biblical times, 7 deadly sins today. It really hasn't changed.
True. Good point. Yeah. And also history repeats itself too,
Yeah.
So now you started off as a stand-up comic, right? Before you did the writing and everything else, right? And
sure.
When you started, I'm sure it was, it wasn't that long ago, but I'm sure it was like...
No, it was long ago. It was long ago, Kimbra. It was. I first went on stage in 1977, and then I was in law school at the time, so I kind of made my decision to go into comedy and leave law and move to New York early 1979.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there weren't very many places to do it then. It wasn't like today where every town in America has a open mic night or a comedy night of some sorts. It wasn't like that, or sort of social media or anything like that. I didn't know there were other comics doing it when I was doing it in Washington, D.C. Then I met Louis Black, who's running around town in D.C. like I was.
You mean
crashing.
Louis
Black.
Oh, Louis.
No, not Louis C.K. Louis Black.
Right.
And we were just crashing singer-songwriter nights. That's what we were doing. There was no, you go in and say, I'm going to do comedy. Like, what? I'm going to go on stage and do comedy. What? Nobody really wasn't. as it is today, where everybody's familiar with it and everybody knows somebody in their family does stand-up comedy. It's like gay. Stand-up comedy in 1979 was like gay in 1979. Nobody really knew about it. Nobody knew somebody who
Don't
did it.
ask, don't tell.
Yeah, don't ask. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't certainly don't tell people that's what you're doing because
Because
nobody knew how you can make a living doing it.
could you? I'm sure your parents were felt the same way. Like, I want to be a stand-up comic, and they'd be like, "What?"
Oh, oh, when I quit law school. I mean, my dad. People told me this later in my hometown. I was going to come back to that area and practice law. People would ask my dad, where's your son? I thought he was going to law school. He got kidnapped by the Moonies. The Moonies was a religious cult back then. It was easier for him in his mind to say I just ran off with a religious cult than join the circus because nobody in my family had ever joined the circus.
Wow,
Which
that's
is what showbiz is. I don't care where it is or what it is. It's all some version of the
true.
circus.
That's a good point. Whether it's music, comedy,
Doesn't matter.
straight
It's
play.
just, it's all. I don't know about music, but I think in stand-up comedy, it's a pirate ship, and it's all yo ho ho and a bottle of rum. Everybody's singing and partying until a job shows up, and then it's every person for themselves. So,
Hmm.
I'm not sure about how music is,
I
but
think to a certain degree. Oh yeah, to a certain degree, music's like is like that, and even just auditioning with other actresses for parts. It's like I mean, not everybody's like that, but I had a good friend that we were good friends. We had the same manager and we did social things together. But if we ever accidentally got on the same audition, all of a sudden I noticed she became this other woman. Like looking at me like the competition,
yeah.
right? And so I think it's such a because they're good auditions are probably hard to come by, so people just get like
Sure. I mean, in music, you can have a group and you can have a group jam. I mean, you're going to have 500 musicians on stage playing. I think they do it sometimes.
yeah, that's
And
true.
but in stand-up comedy, there's one microphone. There's
That's
only one microphone. There's only one person up there at a time.
that's true.
So
That's true. So you did the stand-up comedian. You did the stand-up comedy for how many years before you got into other things?
um, it I always think that no matter what you entered doing in showbiz, no matter what you entered showbiz doing, whether it was acting or dancing or whatever, eventually you're going to have to learn to do something else to stay in showbiz.
Your side hustle,
And
you mean?
yeah, but some other sort of thing to do. I mean, some people become an agent for a while, or
Right.
I became a writer. So, 1994, I had the last of my five TV pilots didn't get picked up for a series. So, I got heckled by Sean Penn in South Carolina. It was in it was in Charleston, South Carolina. And
Really?
it was a lot of fun heckling. He was very playful. It was fun. We had
Oh, good.
fun.
Good.
And afterwards, the club manager said, Sean Penn's here. He's the guy who was doing all that. We almost were like a comedy team. It was so much fun. And then afterwards, I hung out with him all night long.
I
And
love
before
Sean,
I was,
by the way. I really have a lot of respect for him as a person and an actor.
oh yeah, yeah, he was wild that night. He was having a good time. And I was like, I'm going back to my hotel room. And he goes, oh, before you go, I got to say something to you. I go, what? He goes, you got to move to Los Angeles. This was 1992. And I'd been in Los Angeles for 10 years. I thought he knew who I was. He just thought he discovered a funny guy in South Carolina.
Oh,
And so I realized I wasn't making any dent as a stand-up. I mean, he didn't know who I was. I realized I really wasn't. And I had a child at that point to support. And I came back and I was telling a friend that I said, bro, I'm not. He said, why don't you write for TV, man? Everybody knows you're a good writer. Why don't you write for TV? And he suggested I call up everybody I know who had a series, and it was mid-season. It's like February, so there really wasn't. They weren't like you know looking for writers at that point. Everybody was in the second part of their production for the sitcoms, but I called Seinfeld and Tim Allen and Roseanne, and Roseanne called me back that night and said, "Show up tomorrow, you got a job." So I started writing for TV. That was it.
I love so you're talking about the original Roseanne show.
Yes, yes, yes. This is 1992. So that started me writing for TV, and then I wrote for other stand-up comics too, and so I started writing more, and I found I like it a lot. I don't mind. Some people they want to hear that laugh coming from their mouth, but if I write something and you say it and you get a laugh, whether it's on a TV show or stand-up comedy, I enjoy that. I enjoy that knowing that those people are laughing because something that I wrote.
Yeah.
It
What a
doesn't have to come out of my mouth. I mean, it's always a visceral thing. When you're on stage, you feel it.
sure,
It's a
sure.
it's a visceral thing. But I enjoy watching other people get laughs with something I wrote.
How many years did you?
Unless they stole it from me. Unless
Yeah,
they stole the
right.
joke.
Oh,
Yeah.
I listened to a lot of podcasts and they were talking about like comedy podcasts. I love comedy. I'm a frustrated comedian. It's like but I don't want to go into that world unless someone gave me like a role on a show. But I don't want to do stand up comedy. But I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts, and I always hear about the certain ones that stole the jokes. I won't badmouth them, but I just always hear about that. At the comedy
Yeah.
store.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a thing in our world. You can't really copyright, you can't lock it down. If you put it in a script, you can. If you did a one-person show and you had all your jokes in that script, and that script could become copyrighted. But otherwise, just going on doing stand-up comedy, and there's all versions of there's stealing the joke outright, and then there's some comic may break the code. When I say, they figure out what is funny or how a funny approach to something, and then other comics will do their version of that. But that's not, it's just joke twisting.
That's
But
that's
but
kind of
it
like songwriting. We do that. You got the little formula, and then you just kind of morph it a little bit.
yeah, yeah, right, right. So there's that. There's doing versions of it, but outright stealing, it changed. You heard of the comic Lenny Bruce and Mort Saul back in the late '50s, early '60s. What the comic said became associated with who the comic was, and that changed joke stealing in comedy from a misdemeanor to a felony. It became really important because then it became identified with you, and people identified that that's my life.
Oh, I see.
I mean, I've heard somebody actually do. I did a story about jumping off a roof and grabbing a flagpole, and then I saw this comic do it. And I go, that's my story. And he goes, yeah, but that was a good story to tell. I said, no, it's my story. It's like, I actually did that. You can't just take my story and
Right,
do it as if you did it. I mean, it's the
right.
same as stealing a joke. So it's, it's really weird thing for stand-up comics. And you have to let it go. You can't get caught up in it. I mean, somebody does it in front of you, see it, but you just can't go around chasing everybody who steals jokes because there's a lot. There are a lot.
Yeah, and I follow you on Facebook, and you give like these little 1 minute, gosh, glimpses of comedy history, right? And
Yeah.
stories.
Hmm.
Very educated. That's Craig Mitchell, as you know, my producer. He was the one that
Yeah.
you got to follow Rich on Facebook. He's really
Yeah. Yeah,
right.
I do on the Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and I finally passed it off to these uh, a guy who's a social media expert. It drives me nuts doing it, and so I just want to go
Yeah, it's
back to
so
writing.
time consuming, right?
It's so time consuming, and so he and his team, his the people that he works with, they're going to do it, and then I just have to give them the raw material, which I like doing. I like creating the videos. My wife and I create the videos together, and so that's a lot of fun because she's funny and she's a great editor and she has a great eye. So I trust her completely, and we have fun. We just have fun doing it,
What a
doing
great
those videos. We
bonding,
have
a
fun.
great bonding thing for you guys too.
Oh my God, it's just so much fun. I mean, she has her own writing, her own things she's doing, but we do this together and we have fun doing it. And if we do it a couple hours, in fact, we're going to do them this week, do more. But
That's,
I just love creating them.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
how
yeah.
long did you write for Roseanne then?
2 years, 2 seasons, and
Hmm.
then Jeff Foxworthy, he had a show on. I think it was going from ABC or NBC or NBC to ABC. It was shifting networks, and
Hmm.
he asked me to come write for him. And you think, well, I know Roseanne was doing it last season,
Hmm.
so there was no. So I thought I'd jump over there because maybe his show would go for a few more seasons, but it did only go for running one for 1 year. But that's the business, and then you have to find another job and another one, and you have to just keep hopping around. And if you get lucky, like say some of the people who wrote for Ray Romano, Ray,
Oh, I
everybody
love
loves
that
Raymond.
show.
Or, it's a
That's
great show, and they had a staff that, as I understand it, pretty much was stayed the same all through the entire run. So if you get on a show like that, and that's great because you're coming back next season. You're like, this show's going to go on 7, 8, 9. I don't know how many years it went on,
yeah. I was like
but
7 or 8 at least, right?
yeah, 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 yeah. It seems like that's a good. a good one. I know. I think Seinfeld went 9. Jerry likes the number 9. I like number 9's my number too. I don't know what your number is. You have a prime
I
number
always
that's
say
your number?
6, but I don't know.
Well, you say 6, it's 6. That's how tough it is. I mean,
um,
if you say 6 is your number, that's your
it's
number,
my
Kimbra.
lucky number 6. Um,
Yeah.
I saw Seinfeld Jerry on a interview once where he said they asked him because I think he got off the show when it was still doing really well in the ratings, and he
Oh
said,
my God. It's still, yeah, of course it was.
yeah, and he said, he goes, I knew to get off the Ferris wheel when it was on its way up and not on the way down. I thought that was a good analogy.
He's absolutely correct. I've never met a guy in stand-up comedy, um, who has broken it down better, thinks more about it, the mechanics of it, the
Yeah,
soul of it. Jerry's very, very thoughtful.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, some comics just go up and they wing it and do it, but after a while, you have to kind of understand some of the things. And I learned a lot from Jerry, especially when I first started. He was somebody who thought about. I mean, I didn't even know what joke timing was until I worked with him once back in 1979. I just went, well, I make them laugh when I do this, but I didn't know the constructing of the joke
Sure.
to the timing.
Yeah, the pay. What did they say? The payoff, right? Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, you have to have a setup that gets them to the punchline at exactly the moment you deliver the punchline. Not too much setup so that they're waiting for you, and not enough so they're not there yet. It's an interesting thing. I mean, even if it's storytelling or whatever, you have a pace. You have a pace within the joke, not the pace of your act, but the but the
Yeah.
the joke timing. Yeah, it's weird, man. You break it down. It's like somebody. I think it was Otto von Bismarck said, "Those who like war, or no, those who like sausage and war should not see how they are made." And I'm
Oh
going to
yeah,
add stand-up comedy. Those who like comedy should not see how it's made. It takes all the fun out of it.
that's a good. Is that a metaphor? Yeah, I guess
No,
it.
that's just a saying. I think he was
Oh,
a
okay.
German politician in the 19th century, and he said those who like war and sausage should not see how they're made.
So
And
true. I
and
could.
I add comedy to that. Those who like war, sausage, and comedy should not see how they are made.
You'll never do it
Because
again.
you're not like it's not just fun. It's not so good.
Yeah. Now you have a credit that I read about on your I think it's your Wikipedia page, but it's because he's someone I really like a lot. But you wrote Bill Maher wrote a foreword for you, right? For your book. Is that how it went?
Yeah, yeah. I've known Bill since '79 when I moved to New York.
Uh-huh.
I consider him a friend, and
Uh-huh.
he wrote a foreword for my book. He wrote a book called True Story. I wrote a script adaptation of that. I hope he picks it back up again. It's one of those situations where he was going to do it for HBO, and at the same time, the Showtime had a series called "I'm Dying Up Here," which was stand-up comedy at the same period. Now, the story was not the same, but the period of time, the late '70s in stand-up comedy, was the same. So Bill lost interest in doing his because we really couldn't put another series on like that, and that one didn't work. It's very difficult. Like I said, the problem with that series, like any series, you can't really do the reality of the times. If you showed stand-up comedy in the late '70s, where women were very marginalized in
Sure.
terms of and what they could say on stage was even restricted,
Mhm.
and how they dressed on stage was restricted, and not by the club owners themselves, but by the times
Yeah.
and even themselves. I mean, my first wife, Carol Leifer, was a stand-up comic, and I remember her going on stage and she'd wear a jacket to to cover her breast
Oh,
because guys in the audience, and I've seen this several times, would yell out, "Show us your tits." They would yell that out, right? And this is stand-up comedy in the late '70s, early '80s.
right,
It was
right,
a different time, so you can't show exactly what was going on because it was different, and
right.
it would seem weird to audiences today. Even the minorities, or black or Mexican American comedians, whoever. There were no gay comedians out on stage back in the late
Sure.
'70s.
There was
So the times wouldn't
yeah.
would it wouldn't be funny to today's audience.
There was a show on God, it was HBO or Showtime. It was a few years ago now. With it was kind of loosely based on the Comedy Store and Mitzi Gaynor and not Mitzi Gaynor, Mitzi. What's her last name? Mitzi
Mitzi
Shore.
Shore.
Yeah, Mitzi
Oh,
Shore.
you mean you no no Showtime? That was called "I'm Dying Up Here." That was based on a book
Oh, I love that
of the
series.
same.
I loved.
Yeah,
I mean, I love that show.
right. But they had to change how people really acted in that time for modern audiences. So it was a real dichotomy right off the bat. It's a weird kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't.
And then there was Mrs. Maisel, the same sort of situation.
Yeah,
But you know, I mean, that the stories are great, and if the stuff off stage you can make work, right? But the stuff on stage gets difficult.
yeah, yeah. That particular show, I'm Dying Up Here. I really liked it, but people I was watching it with didn't like it because they said, "God, it's so depressing." And I said,
Well, then again, here it's just what I said. If you like comedy, you don't want to see backstage too much. Now you can make it funny backstage, and I would say to do that. I don't know why they wanted to make it that much of a drama. I don't know why they
"Yeah,
wanted
that's
to make it
true.
that. And
Good
that and
point."
I would that to me the tone of the show was wrong. Make it fun. Look, we have a lot of fun backstage. There's a lot of stories that are funny, even stuff that was hellish at the times. The comics love swapping stories of things that go wrong out in the road,
Right.
but they always end up being funny. And even at that time when they're happening, the comics will make them funny. But I know I watched that show the same thing. Why is it that much of a drama? Don't make stand-up comedy a drama.
Yeah, it was
Hacks is the same. I have the same problem with hacks, but you know, I look. It's a busman's holiday for any comic to watch stand-up comic to watch a show about stand-up comedy.
a.
You know,
What does that
because
mean?
you go,
What does that mean
yeah,
about?
it's like you. A busman's holiday is driving somewhere. You know, a busman doesn't want to drive anywhere because they drive
Oh,
all day. So I don't want to watch a show about stand-up comedy because I've lived it and done it, and it doesn't jive with my reality or my perception of what happened. So it's not that enjoyable. And now that doesn't mean the general audience doesn't find it
yeah.
entertaining.
I
That's a whole different situation.
Yeah, I liked it. I guess sometimes I like watching shows like that because I know so many people like that. It seemed very true to life in some ways, so I enjoyed it from that aspect. But the person I was watching it with was like, this is too depressing.
Well, yeah, and then if you show again, so many characters in showbiz. I mean, it is showbiz is its own form of mental illness. Let's face it.
Got to
It
be a
could be
slightly.
you. Yeah, you have to find a way to separate yourself somehow from that showbiz character or thing where it's all consuming, all I me mine, like the George Harrison song, all through the day. I me mine, I me mine, I me mine,
True.
and that becomes relentless and. Um, it can be people have a sense of entitlement. I see comics they had a career back in the 80s, right? And they're like, why can't I be doing that now? You don't. It's not the post office, man. You don't do 40 years and retire. You might only had a couple of years where you were relevant and working, and that's how it works. That's it.
Yeah.
It's showbiz. It's not. You didn't get in here for security, did you?
Right, right. That's so true. I mean, and so, there's a handful like that work throughout the ages, in any
Well,
form.
they have a name that Jerry Seinfeld. They have a an iconic sitcom. There's three guys like that every generation has just a couple of people who are going to get to that top. I mean, at this point, my generation, the comics that came up working in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, if you didn't make a name for yourself, your time's pretty much that's it. I wrote in my book, I had this book. About that era, the 80s. I said, you have a certain amount of time. You're like an athlete. You have a certain amount of time to make it, to make a name for yourself,
Sure.
where the audience will follow you out of the comedy clubs into the theaters,
Hmm.
or you follow them out of the comedy clubs onto the cruise ships. Because that's the only place comics my age are working where they can get steady work because they can't draw. The comedy clubs don't want them. They're too old. There's rare guys like Dom Herrera who worked the comedy clubs forever. I mean, even into his 60s, he was still
Wow.
working the comedy clubs. He's a rare guy that could attract a younger audience to what he was doing up there.
That's that's
Um,
that's yeah,
yeah.
you're right. Now that I think about it. So how many books did you write? You mentioned the
I
one.
wrote I wrote one book in 2016 called "Kicking Through the Ashes,"
Hmm.
and then Mark Schiff and I are co-compilers. That's what it says in the title of a book called "I Killed," which was a compilation of road stories from all sorts of comedians,
Hmm.
all sorts of stories. Jay Leno, Chris Rock, Seinfeld, all sorts of people had stories, either road stories or working something in the stand-up world.
Yeah, Chris Rock is another one who's just like I really think that guy is so talented. I mean, it's
Oh my God.
so
Oh
funny.
my God. Yeah, you have two components of stand-up comedy, right? There's the writing, which we kind of talked about, and then there's the performing, connecting with the audience, making that that written material sing up there.
Mm-hmm.
And most comics are considerably better in one area than another. I
Mm-hmm.
always consider myself a better writer than a stand-up performer.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Rock is one of those guys who excels at both. He has a delivery which is unique. He does a preacher, double pumps his setups. He'll repeat the setup, you know.
Right. That's a good point. The preacher
So
thing. Yeah.
the big piece of chicken, the big piece of chicken. You know, he'll repeat it, and he'll repeat the setup, and he has a pace up there. Uh, yeah, and he smiles. All he's really enjoying the whole thing.
And he's got this energy, this like
Oh, that
energy,
the energy, absolutely,
like
absolutely.
um another one that has he's getting a little older now, but I mean, and the reason why I said that is his earlier stuff was Sebastian Maniscalco, who I'm a big fan of. He is
Yes,
super physical, right? And
very, very much,
I think that's
very
part of
much.
his whole shtick, is the little physical
He,
stuff.
he's the Italian opera of stand-up comedy. He
Yeah.
is very over the top, demonstrative, and and not everybody can do that. I mean, everybody sells up there. Everybody sells, and you sell hard one way or another, unless it's the material, like Mitch Hedberg or Stephen Wright. They like Mitch Hedberg, I think, famously said, "I write. I don't make this stuff on stage. I'm the king of the pen. I'm not the king of the improv." Right.
Yeah.
So that you either do your work writing or you're doing it up there. And some comics are selling trash, man, but they're selling hard. They may
No,
be selling hack jokes, but they're selling hard. But Chris Chris Rock is the audience is this is my idea anyway, out of my thought. They give it up to the person who wants it the most up there. Robin Williams was clearly loving being up there and needed to hear that laughter. And the audience respond to that. And I think with Chris Rock, I mean, you could see the enthusiasm he brings to being up there. And it's infectious for the audience.
that's true. That's a good point. Um, so with Robin Williams, he just had that, like you say, it was almost like an addict for for the laughter.
Oh my
You know,
God. I mean, God. Yeah, yeah. I saw him once improv. He improv with a lot of people. He'd improv regularly with Billy Crystal, Rick Overton, who's another stand-up comic. He'd come to town. Robin would come to town in L.A. and they'd improv together or wherever they met up. And one time he was improv with Billy Crystal at the
hmm
Los Angeles Improvisation on
hmm
Melrose Avenue in West Hollywood. And so packed audience, everybody, the whole bar clears out, and the room is packed, standing room only. People are all over the place and they're up there. And Billy Crystal's good; he's really good. But
hmm
Robin would move up stage on it. You know, he'd get closer to the audience and deliver a line. So Billy's no idiot. He comes up, stands next to Robin, to deliver his next line. They're going back and forth, right? And
Right.
then eventually. Robin's hanging 10 off the edge of the stage, and Billy comes up, hangs 10, and then Robin just jumps off the stage, starts running around the audience, right? Doing his shtick in the audience. And Billy just kind of looks at him, shrugs his shoulder, and goes back to the piano and sips water and waits for him because there's nothing he can do.
He's like,
And Robin, do it to his credit, after a while, he kind of realized he had left the improv part of the show and now turned it into a solo stand up in the audience, and then
oh, yeah,
sheepishly comes back to the stage and start doing it. But he just wants it so bad, he just can't help himself,
right. No,
or couldn't. I'm sorry.
I, I have a question for you. What does crowd work mean exactly? Does that mean you just kind of like work with the crowd, like whatever they come up with?
Yeah, yeah. You're now again. It's funny because you see the reels are very popular because it looks like the comics always doing improv. When
hmm
I would say this, if you see edits in the reel, that means it's not it truly improv, but you don't know what happened in between that's
hmm
edited out.
hmm
They're cherry picking.
hmm
Maybe they did 40 minutes of of crowd work, that's going in the audience and trying to find some
Bit.
humor on the spot with the audience.
Right.
And out of that 40 minutes, they got 2 minutes or a minute, a half a minute, whatever. But it's it's like in the Olympics, right? The degree of difficulty in a dive. If you have prepared material and you're doing it night after night, we expect you to be able to pull that off. But if you're going on and this is truly improv.
hmm
But what is truly improv? And then and also comics have stock lines themselves, even for themselves, not just the stock lines of dealing with hecklers or things happen in the moment. But you can, if you know it and you've been around, you can see it when they're doing something that's not really truly improv. But when you're doing that and the audience is in the moment, 'cause this whole thing's a live show. That's the beauty of, in fact, even when they're doing straight stand up, the illusion is that the comic is sort of making this up as they go along. That's the conversational part of stand up comedy. They're not. It's an act. But if they can, Robin's genius was making his look like improv every night.
Right.
He would mix and match and throw things around differently and even start a bit differently or the setup differently. But Robin's whole thing was he made it look like it was totally improv, even when he was just not doing stuff with the audience. But the crowd work,
Hmm.
it used to be, and this is just again my history of it. When I first started, most times you'd get some crowds that want to play. They'd want to you to mess around with them a little bit, crowd work. But
Hmm.
most audiences didn't because they were kind of shy. They didn't want to be in the spotlight.
Sure.
The audiences did want to be in the spotlight in the 70s and 80s. They're drinking, maybe to get a little loose with some heckling, but then once you sort of put the spotlight on them and they kind of back down, there wasn't a lot of the audience feeling like they'd rather you did the show. That most of the time that's what's going on now. And even the questions that the comics would ask to elicit a response were very surface.
Hmm.
Where are you from? What do you do for a living? Those were the
Sure.
typical questions in my era. But now the audiences want to be part of the show, so
Right.
they'll come and sit up front and tell the audience, yeah, I'm dating my sister's ex-husband here,
Yeah.
right? They want to be part of the show, and they'll have some weird, wild story that
Right.
could be gold for the comic, and
Right.
they
Right.
want to share that. They want to be part
Right.
of the show. It's totally different.
That's so funny. What would you give advice to young comics? Is it the same as when you started? Just do open mics, just start,
Yeah, it's so different with the social media and the open mics and how many comics. There's so many comics now. I
Mhm.
mean, at the point in Los Angeles, there are actually more comics than available audience members. It's just
Too much.
too much to even comprehend how many people identify as being a comedian, whether it's they're hobbyists or they're amateurs or they do it,
Sure.
side thing or whatever. But the only advice that I ever give them now, the only thing that stays the same is it's all function of stage time. The only way to get better is to go on stage.
Mm.
If you're an actress, you could practice monologues at home.
Sure.
If you're a dancer, you practice dancing at home. You can practice your musical instrument at home. Stand-up comedy, you got to be in front of an audience. You have to have that live experience to get better. So that's the only thing that stayed the same. Everything else, not my experience when I started is really not relevant to them today, except for that one thing. It's all a function of stage time.
Do you think the audiences, I mean, this may sound like a dumb question, but say you have good material, right? But some nights the audience just doesn't, respond. So
Yeah,
is it sometimes
yeah.
it's just the audience, right?
No, you got to read the room. Your job is to read the room, right? And know if you know, like, look, you're in back in the day, I wasn't known. People they were coming out trusting the comedy club to put on a good comedian. They came out for the experience of seeing stand-up comedy. Then they go, oh, this is the comic you have tonight. Okay. And you're like, it's a whole audience of people, mix people, they're from Atlanta, so you kind of know they're Southern and deal with those situations. Or if you're in a smaller town, you know that. You have to learn to read the room.
Mm,
That's it. And if it's a private gig, well, you're doing a benefit for a temple or something like that. It's largely a Jewish audience. You know who the
right.
room is. So you have to read the room, and that's the comic's job. And I've seen people be totally tone deaf. Not look
That's
if
so
you're on a
funny.
cruise ship. Yeah,
I use
I'm
that.
sorry.
I'm sorry. That's funny. I use that expression all the time, not specifically for comedy, but I'm always like, read the room. It's like,
Read the room. Look, it's not just look. You're up there. I mean, this is the way I looked at it. I'm in a band. We're in a band. The audience and I are in a band. I'm leading the band. So don't play music that they can't play.
right.
To if you know what I mean. If it's not that sophisticated, I say set the mower low and cut the grass. Don't get fancy.
Yeah.
So you have to. It's not a monologue. It is a monologue, but they'll tell you with their laughter what they
Right.
like and don't like.
That's true.
So I'd throw some maybe little sexual innuendo. And this is again 40 years ago. I'd throw a sexual innuendo in the beginning. If they bought it, really liked it, I go, okay, we're going to get more sexual as this show goes on. But I got a hint up front.
Right.
You kind of if you can hear it as a comic. I'm listening to the audience. I can hear the laughter. If I'm getting too high laugh, like I'm only getting the women, I'm leaving the men behind.
Right.
I'd like to have a balance. I want the men and women laughing big. So if you hear an imbalance, then fine tune what you're doing a little bit. I don't know. That's just me.
I think that's great advice. And like I said, I really enjoy your Facebook and TikTok. Well, I don't follow you on TikTok, but Instagram and Facebook. And so, do you have any other things coming up that you want to talk about, like any new books or, what's in
No,
your?
I'm not gonna. I do a show with the history of stand-up comedy. I do a live show,
Mm,
and I'm going to tape it at the Throckmorton in Mill Valley, California,
okay.
July 25th. So I've been
Northern,
doing this for a while.
Northern
Pardon?
California, Northern California.
Northern California. Yeah, it's north of San Francisco. It's where Robin Williams lived, Mill Valley,
Mhm.
and it's a great little theater. I just want to do this thing, and I'll keep putting these little videos out. I'm just interested in the stand-up and the history and the mechanics of comedy now, and yeah, I just like writing. I'm not, if somebody calls and say, you want to do stand up here? I'm like, well, what is it? How much? Where is it? I don't have to do it anymore. I quit doing touring. I don't do that anymore.
Right.
It's not paying for me. And I don't want to do that. I just want to stay home with my wife and
Aw.
our dog. That's it. I'm an
Well,
old guy.
yeah. Well, no, but I can tell just by talking to you today that you're just with it. You're sharp, and you've got great advice. And you know the formula. You're right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I still work with a lot of young comics, and Ashley Goodermouth and Helen Wiley are two young women who I met, and they worked with me. I did a show in my hometown in Pennsville, New Jersey, a couple of weeks ago, and they opened for me, and it was great to watch them. I talk about it's a small town in New Jersey, and they both live in the New York City area and worked in New York clubs and all. So to watch them adapt to what they were doing,
Right.
the same thing. They read the room well, and they learn from it. They learn from, ooh, just
What happened?
kick the
You moved the room.
kick, yeah, kick that move the room. But anyway, I love I like working with them on material and stuff. It's fun to see what they're doing, what they're talking about. But the stuff is, like I said before, it's human behavior, and human behavior really hasn't changed much over a couple of million years,
True.
right?
Well,
Right? It really hasn't. I mean, the language changes, the technology changes, some things in the culture change. Obviously, it's a different culture.
yes.
But a lot of times the human behaviors, the seven deadly sins are the seven deadly sins,
Like we
no
were
matter
talking,
what day it is.
like we were talking about with Shakespeare,
Yeah.
human behavior stays the
That's
same.
why, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, it's been great having you on. I have
Thank,
other
thank you.
guests coming soon, so I just wanted to say
Hey, thank you.
thank you. I'm glad we made this work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Your
it's good.
show in Mill Valley, is it going to be broadcast anywhere, or is it just like a live show?
We're gonna tape it.
Hmm.
Um, we're gonna tape it. I think I'll put it on YouTube. Anybody wants to watch it if I haven't done anything by then. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with it, but I am gonna tape it. I have other tapes of the show, but this one I'm looking forward to it. I think it's a great little theater, and Mike Carano will do a good job of with a few cameras, and we'll have some fun.
Oh, good. Well, I look forward to. I'm sure I'll see at least clips on your.
Yeah, we'll do something. We'll do something.
Thanks again, Rich, and hopefully
Thanks,
I'll
Kimbra.
see you soon.
Been a
Okay.
pleasure. Been a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.